All right, so welcome everybody. This is Elaine, nutritionist and lead facilitator with the Blue Matter Project. I'm so excited about today's guest who will be speaking to us all about mindset and mastering the tools for inspired and authentic action. Julian Ho is an innovation consultant and entrepreneur specializing in wellness and fitness. He is the director of innovation at Tonic, the co-founder and director of VITA, and the founder of 2.0 Toronto, a nonprofit organization specializing in fitness event curation and peer-to-peer facilitation. Julian's approach is holistic, heart-centric, and all about high impact. Julian, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Elaine.
So you and I, we met at a Sweat and Tonic event not too long ago, actually. And I feel like we had so much to talk about. I'm pretty sure we closed the event down. And we talked all about mindset. We talked about we talked about innovation, our entrepreneurial journeys. So I'm so excited to continue this chat with you again today. And you have so much experience and wisdom. For our listeners today, can you tell us a little bit about why and how you started this journey?
Well, thank you for that introduction. I do feel humbled when people say I have so much wisdom and whatnot. I feel like everyone has their own personal level of wisdom and the volume of which they can bring lived in experience to the table and share that. I've just been very lucky and privileged to have platforms and people in my corner that see what I do and help push me to spread that word. So I just wanted to preface with that privilege and gratitude and appreciation for the people that have been supporting me, you being one of them as well with this platform. Some of the ways that I've been able to harness innovation and my mindset and wisdom, it starts sort of with my nature. I'm a twin. And
I did not know that, actually.
Yeah, fun fact. Fun fact about Julian Ho. I'm a twin. I have a twin brother. His name's Nathan. He and I grew up very competitive, always being compared, and always being dressed the same. And we believed we grew our independence and individuality very, very early on. And it's not like we didn't really embrace being twins, because there's some twins friends of ours that just love being together and almost being halves of each other. But the twin thing became the seed to become different. I not necessarily was tired and sick of being compared, but I did feel like I wanted to showcase who I was and not just be the Ho brothers, the twins. So there was a sense of identity that wanted me to burst out of this social identity that I've been given as a twin. We're fraternal, but we look identical. So that's one thing that has helped me really shape the pace and the drive to become something different. And I can share more on that later. Another thing that's helped me gather wisdom is, again, an internal thing. Is I have eczema. I have atopic dermatitis with my hands. And as a young kid, I had it all over my body. It was very severe, and it gave me crippling social anxiety. It changed my own identity and the way that I looked internally and how I needed to be validated. And so I used my eczema as a source for fuel to drive me to grow beyond the surface, meaning I needed to use the insides and the depth of my character to express who I was and not just rely on my natural good looks and stuff like that. Because at that time I was like, oh, I'm red everywhere and itchy. So that really birthed, from pain and suffering, it birthed a whole different way of looking at social interaction and, again, personal identity. And then the third thing that I'd probably say that helped really spark the the wisdom that I have now is a coaching system called the Check Institute, or Paul Check. It's a holistic lifestyle coaching system that's helped me differentiate myself from the regular or the mass fitness that's out there. It's part functional kinesiology. It's also very lifestyle based, meaning they speak about the wellness spectrum, sort of sleep, nutrition, hydration, introspection, all these sort of things that create a human being as a whole. And it also helped me with my competitive edge that was naturally authentic. It was words, material, education that came from inside me that matched and aligned. So that's sort of the three things that I could think of that helped get me to where I am today.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really interesting always to hear a little bit more of like a personal note, what you've gone through. So thank you for sharing that. What would you say are some of the ways that you continue to stay positive and driven on this path?
Well, I'm a very big fan of positive psychology. So the main facets to positive psychology is an acronym called the PERMA-V model, and it stands for positivity, engagement, relationships, meaning, achievement / accomplishment, and vitality. And this is, to me, a daily checklist. It's a recipe for that driven state to stay positive. So every day I do something that makes me feel positive and up. I try to find ways to get engaged with perhaps work or playing piano or working out. Relationships, I make an effort to reach out to someone and connect deeply rather than just interact. How do you connect with someone? By maybe actively listening and showing care. Meaning, doing something meaningful, like maybe feeding the soul with some books and some great readings. Achievement, accomplishment, I try to do one thing every day and accomplish that one thing. If I don't, there might be a million things on the list of the day, but I always try to tackle just that one thing to keep it precise. And then vitality, I take care of my body, my mind, and nourish myself.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the ways that I think would be a very compact, quick way to stay positive and driven.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel I can relate to that. And I think a lot of people who are listening today can relate to the fact of, that checklist, like, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that. But I'm really curious, in your opinion, how important for you is white space? Because I feel like when we are super motivated, we're super driven, I feel like that white space in our schedule often gets eliminated. At least it does for me. So personally, I find white space to be very important to me now, but I'd love to hear for you, how important is that white space and what does that look like for you?
So when I interpret white space, that's like just calm, quiet time, right?
Yeah, so like downtime where you're not doing much, maybe wandering, maybe like letting the mind wander to things that are unrelated, I want to say.
Well, prioritizing white space is twofold for me. It's one, self-care, and then two, creativity. So taking the time to be with yourself is really, really important. In the Czech system, he says, the 4 doctors that you'll ever need to know: Dr. Movement, Dr. Happiness, Dr. Diet, and then finally the chief physician is Dr. Quiet. And Dr. Quiet is all about sleep, self-time, introspection, spiritual development. We call it anabolic rebound, so regenerative states, getting the tissues to repair. I think of a quote, if you don't go within, you go without. So practices like meditation, journaling, breath work, walking in nature, immersing yourself in maybe a level of nothingness where you don't have an outcome from that quiet space is very important. Those are the things that I definitely curate into my day. So after this, I'm going to go for a walk.
Amazing.
And it's just like, hey, there's no intention here. Maybe the intention is for sure to tap into Dr. Quiet, but that's an open, free time for me to do something. And that doing is more so being with myself.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I actually like that word better than Whitespace, Dr. Quiet. I'm going to use that one. So in our society, I feel that we can get instant gratification in every way possible. To give you an example, just last week, I was like, ooh, I really want a speaker. And I looked it up on Amazon, I bought a speaker, and within literally 18 hours, the speaker was at my door. So instant gratification, again, is something that I feel like we can get in every way possible, except when it comes to career satisfaction and strength of relationships. Because these two things, career and relationships, are slow, they're uncomfortable, they're messy processes that require a lot of consistency. I'd love if you can talk to us a little bit about that, as well as your experience with that.
I really love how Nadine had prepped me, or Charlene prepped me for this, because there's so many things that I wanted to share. And I came to 3 quotes. And I mean, they say consistency is key. So the quote that first popped in was, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." So I'm speaking a lot about behavioral psychology, and the idea to motivate oneself and to have that inner motive, to know what that moral compass is saying and to know where your North Star is, are very, very important things. But getting lost in the big picture is sometimes a bit in over our heads. So the repetitions are small bite-sized pieces towards that bigger idea. So when I think about building a habit, it's dedicating and committing as opposed to being rigid about that. So I've learned over time that consistency is a commitment, but I've often failed at the consistency part because I've been too rigid about things. So a principle that I've been working on and helping others with is the commitment over rigidity. So let's say, for example, running. I could be committed to becoming a better runner and committed to the goal of running a 10K, but that's not to say that I need to be rigid about my program towards that 10K. So if I am consistent in my schedule and every day at 9, I do some sort of run conditioning or running thing, committing to that time is great, but let's say something changes in the environment where, you have an appointment or you have kids that are going to take your attention, your time away, and you can't get to that time slot. Now, that's not all about abandoning. It's just knowing the difference between committing and being rigid. So having a perfectionist approach to the 10K goal and saying, nope, I'm going to not divert from that 9 a.m. time slot is not actually benefiting the people around you and your support network. So a big part of becoming consistent is understanding how you make choices. And there's 3 ways that you can create a choice. One is a choice for yourself. It's an optimal choice where it serves yourself and it serves everyone around you and the goal at hand. The second is a suboptimal choice where you're choosing to do something, committing to the 9 a.m. run, but it only serves you, but not the people around you, like your family will have to be pushed aside. That's a suboptimal choice. And then there's indifference. And the indifference is the fact that you just don't choose to do anything. And that's probably the worst decision at all. So in terms of consistency, another quote that comes to mind that I was prepped here was by Muhammad Ali. It's the repetition of affirmations that leads to belief. And once that belief becomes a deep conviction, things begin to happen. So there's a certain level of affirmation, of willpower that leads to action, and that action eventually builds into a belief, and it helps add to the bucket of self-confidence. So a commitment or a consistent task towards maybe a new goal will take a lot of repetition and affirmation, and it's going to take those ups and downs. But eventually, what's called the law of facilitation is that as those neural networks continue to fire through the brain, it says, oh, that 9 a.m. run or that 10K is something that I want to do and I really want to accomplish it. The more and more we continue to practice that on a neurochemical level, it becomes that much easier. That path becomes carved through, and then the habit becomes much easier again to commit to. And then one final thing is, with repetition, the alternate approaches become clear. Options start to open. So you never know until you try. So as you continue to iterate in business and career, you start to see exactly what those decisions have provided you. And the decisions that you've created help manifest more data. And then with more data, then you can start to see other options that are out there. So that kind of summarizes my thoughts on consistency, decision-making.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like, okay, so I feel like that ties in so nicely with what I want to talk about next, which is the concept of the finite mindset versus the infinite mindset, which is developed by Simon Sinek. Are you familiar with him?
Mm-hmm. Start with why.
Yeah, love the why concept. So the finite mindset being that go attitude, that better, faster, stronger, richer mindset, and then the infinite mindset where we're more focused on advancing a particular cause, or we're focused on contributing to something that's bigger than us, or being at service. I'd love if you can talk a little bit about the difference between those two, the finite mindset versus the infinite mindset, and maybe how that's been for you in your journey, since you've been on this journey for quite some time.
So when I think of that, I think of growth mindset and fixed mindset or scarcity mindset. I also think of blue ocean thinking and red ocean thinking. And so what those are is that I think you need a balance of both. I think there's room for different mindsets to take over, and knowing which sort of, if it's a mindset, it's almost like a car that you're driving or a vehicle. If you're looking to get somewhere and it requires a binary approach, black or white, with respect to the commitment over rigidity rule that I was talking about previously, you have to take on a certain level of focus and concentration and not divert yourself, especially if that goal is based off of a time scale or has a time frame or time window. When we're focusing on an inspired idea that's bigger than ourselves, though, how you wrap your mind around achieving those kinds of goals, those kinds of dreams, really also depend on how you set up the framework in which you think. Depends on which car you want to drive. So alluding to the blue ocean versus red ocean principles of business, blue ocean is like an ocean that's free and ideas are plentiful, and there isn't much competition because you've entered a world that is expansive, that again hasn't been flooded by the market, versus a red ocean. Think about the color of red, of blood, where sharks are eating each other and whatnot. So it turns so the competition is overwhelming. So there's the difference there. So how you apply yourself into whatever ocean it is depends on the ideas that you have and how authentic you are to those ideas. And so I was talking about the car and the vehicles as a visual or analogy for the mindset that you want to put on. Depending on where you want to end up, that becomes, whether it's a blue ocean place or red ocean, understanding the environment in which where you want to go to is very, very contextual. And that gives you an idea of, again, the vehicle that you want to drive, how you want to get there, and then the pace in which you want to get there. So let's see if I can wind this down into maybe my own life of training and um, physical character. In terms of running, the focus on getting better and getting ahead and being faster, the finite mindset, is how I applied myself to the world of running a marathon. When I wanted to go to Boston, I wanted to achieve my personal best. I wanted to go at sub 2:55, and that's a really fast time, especially at Boston. So I built up all the habits, the steps that I needed to take on to get to that end goal of specific time. The specificity of the goal required a finite mindset to get there. You know, I did what I could to get there, and I committed, and I was somewhat rigid about it as well. And that helped me get to my goal because that's what it required. I was very happy about it because it was very black and white. You either do it or you don't. The time and the goal, the specifics of that goal dictated the car that I needed to drive, the vehicle that I needed to get there. It was a red ocean because the competition was plentiful. It was huge, but I was okay with that. So being okay with that and knowing that that was my intention, that was my goal, I was okay. You know, I packed it in and I was very happy about that. The other side of it, triathlon training, Ironman, my first ever Ironman. And an Ironman is very daunting. It's about...
That's incredible, by the way. You've done an Ironman?
Yeah, 12 hours of, I think my Ironman time was about 11 hours or sub 11, which is pretty fast as a first timer. But that in essence, I didn't take on a finite mindset because I knew going in for the first time that I didn't want to put these hard set goals, times, and that pressure. It was unnecessary because it was my first time. So again, the context of the mindset really depends on the goal itself and how you set that goal, how you define that goal. So it was an infinite mindset that I put on because I was just looking to do something that was new. It was advancing me because it was a completely different, it required a different wheelhouse within me. So it was expansive. It was that blue ocean place that I was like, you know what, whatever happens, happens. And I'm just happy to be here right now. And I just want to explore how I am as a swimmer, how I am as a cyclist. I know how I am as a runner. I'm very good. So that approach became very enjoyable too. But if I had taken the other finite mindset into the triathlon world, I would have felt so much pressure. I would have gotten in my own way. I would have spiraled down to a point where I wasn't achieving my time goals and whatnot. That would have made the process very, very difficult, very uncomfortable, and not memorable, not fun. It took the fun out of it. So yeah, so choosing the vehicle, the mindset, depends on the goal and the task at hand, because that vehicle will get you there, again, depending on the pace, the time frame, and again, the context of the goal and how you want to accomplish that. So that's sort of what I think about when I think about the difference between finite mindset and infinite mindset.
Yeah, I love that because, I almost want to touch on that a little bit more in terms of mental health, because we do have a lot of listeners, in the community that are entrepreneurs, or, they do have a career that involves them to be entrepreneurial. And to give you an example for myself, I know that when I look back on my 10-year journey as being an entrepreneur, the times when I was so obsessed with like that short-term immediate gratification, to kind of circle back to what we were talking about previously, and when I was focused on what everybody else was doing and kind of responding to what other people were doing, that's when I started to waste a lot of my own will and my resources, and it even like sabotaged my own ambition and my progress because I started to veer off track. So it kind of circles back to that idea of the scarcity mindset. And I think that has a lot to do with our mental health. I'd love if you can just touch a little bit about that, maybe even talk about an experience that you've been through.
Yeah, well, you've talked about seeing people as partners in our vision towards those bigger goals. I'm just reading a question that you had kind of given me. The vision that we have, and I might not ask you to repeat that question because I just went through a thought and I wanted to share it. When the goal at hand or the task at hand is so difficult, for example, climbing a mountain or trekking up a mountain, you start off in competition. You're like, I see that person's decked out in this like awesome gear, and I want to compete with that person because I think I can get this. So it kind of helps initiate. But as you start to climb that imaginary mountain or that mountain, whether it be a business challenge or whatnot, you get to the point where you really start to hit a zone of difficulty and discomfort where you can no longer focus on competition. That doesn't drive you anymore. It then becomes about surviving that uncomfortable zone. Then you look at each other along that journey as not competitors, but comrades, because you're all trying to get to a certain summit. And that could be a different mountain for one person to another. So you start to feel this community sense. You feel this connection with those other successful people. And to spend time, waste time competing and bringing ego into the battlefield, so to speak, it's a waste of energy because that's not going to really help you get to the top. The climb and the trek is so difficult in itself that it's you and the mountain. Forget about anyone around you. Anyone around you is just there as someone as moral support. So hope that, I don't know if that really touches upon your question.
No, absolutely.
Could you ask that question again?
Yeah, you know what, actually, I want to just sort of tie, and this ties really nicely into the next question that I had for you. Because when I first moved to Toronto, I started to develop the mindset that everybody here was like go-getters and everybody was in it for themselves. And it really, because I had that mindset coming in initially, I would say, it almost affected my mental health because I was feeling like I had to be competitive. So one of the things I want to talk about is that like when I first moved to Toronto, that I started to develop that scarcity mindset. I started to feel like, oh, maybe I need to be more competitive. Maybe I need to be more of like a go-getter and everybody's in it for themselves. But as I started to grow my business in Toronto, I started to shift my mindset and I started to realize, hey, you know what? It's actually me that's approaching the circumstances or the situation with a finite mindset instead of an infinite mindset. And now, having sort of grown my business over the past 10 years and during this time that I've been in Toronto, I actually love all the creative energy here. I love that Toronto has a very strong entrepreneurial spirit. And I feel that in our society today, I feel like creative expression has become a currency of its own, and it's really sort of driving our economy. So I want to talk now about sort of creative expression, and we can kind of link it back to mindset again, because I think one of the reasons why people start to feel very stagnant, especially during this time of isolation, is that they check out, or they aren't creating anything, or they feel like they aren't directing their life anymore, or they develop that sense of scarcity mindset. Whereas I feel when we are tapped into our creative expression, we feel more fully alive. We start to engage more with the world, and we feel like we're on that infinite journey together, partnering with other people, as opposed to like a lone man standing on an island kind of thing. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, creativity is definitely a higher level place to get to when people want to get to that creative juice outlet where they can produce things that match themselves and align with their mind, body, and soul and spirit. I think they have to go back to the world of Dr. Quiet. It's that introspection. It's that time alone, that white space. And it's really understanding what your dreams are and really being as authentic as possible. Because a friend of mine had said, if you're not being authentic, you're wasting energy doing other things, because the authenticity is the natural exertion of your soul language. And if you're doing things that are, again, not from deep within, you're putting energy out in a place that, again, is not refracting or reflecting that authenticity. So that's just a small thing that I wanted to say about creativity. In regards to creativity and vertical versus horizontal thinking, I am what people call a neo-generalist. So I'm not a generalist in that I know I'm a master of very little things and a jack of all trades. I find myself a specialist in maybe 2 or 3 vertical things. And I think we're moving into a world where there's a lot of hybridization of ideas. There's a lot of cross-pollination happening and collaboration. The world is becoming more united, and jobs out there are matching more passion and deep purpose as opposed to just profession. There's an increase in elevated sense of professionalism, but how people exert themselves through the ideas that they curate and create are becoming more intertwined. And so as a neo-generalist, I like to bring my worlds together, and I like to wear many hats and bring those hats together as what I call a permaculture, or create an ecosystem within. And how I can, sort of like a Venn diagram, how do you match them all together and see those points of intersection? Those are the pockets of innovation to me, when you can bring your worlds together and then birth something that's authentic, of multiple, and representative of multiple parts of who you are. The hard part in terms of creativity is the ROI and how people in corporate world evaluate creativity, because it's very subjective. I think there's another acronym called the value of investment, and how you can evaluate not just the numbers of what you do, but the qualities of what you do and the character traits that it brings out. How do you bring more spotlight to the values of what you do, and how you influence people, and the emotional intelligence that you bring through, as opposed to the results? It's, again, like going into the world of assessing the process as opposed to assessing and evaluating just the outcome. So to bring those worlds together, I myself am working on projects not just within the fitness world and the wellness world, but also bridging the gap into entrepreneurship and business. And how can I bring both together that allow me to create viable sources of income and viability in general? How do I make things feasible and functional so that my day-to-day is not disrupted, but very productive? And then desirable. This is the things that help match my own personal authenticity and my own creative essence with perhaps what the market is putting forward. So always kind of matching back and forth between me and the market. And it's a great course correction. It's also a great nudge to produce things that are relevant, because I find that if I get really out there into my thinking, and I get kind of wrapped in my own head, I become less and less relatable. And I say that because our connections with people and the relationships that we build are very important. And things that perhaps maybe creatives and designers maybe sometimes struggle with, I speak maybe from myself here, is that relatability. And especially in this time when connection is very important, to be so out there on your island and to be very ego about this is my way and this is the only way, it could be the birth of something beautiful, but it's how you connect with people and connect that idea for people that really takes your creativity to a creative genius. And you think about the most successful people in the world and the smartest people in the world, they're able to take such a crazy concept and then crystallize it and distill it into a way that's relatable and very, very maybe practical and applicable. So those are my thoughts on creativity.
I love it. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Elaine, for inviting me to this really, really nice experience.
Thank you so much, Julian, for who you are, for what you're creating. Thank you so much for being here today, for taking the time, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.